All right, sweet. Recording is started, and this is the January 11th, 2024 Crossplane Community Meeting, the first one of the new year here. So happy new year to everybody, and let's get this thing started. So we did not have a meeting over the holiday time frame, so we have not met in almost a month now. So just looking at, we have not had a new release or a patch release or anything in the new year yet, but we did have one just at the end of last year, before holiday started, and since last community meeting. So we'll quickly look at that one. I don't think it was just a batch release, just for fixing a couple issues. So nothing major that went in there. And I have seen a couple of PRs get merged recently into the main branch with that are being backported to 1.14. So I'm expecting potentially another patch release coming up soon, but I don't think there's anything major or pressing. They look like they're nice fixes, but nothing major that we're driving towards a release ASAP that I'm aware of, at least. Okay. So let's take a look at the roadmap. Let's remember where we are in the milestone here. So we are headed towards the ship date for 1.15 to be the early February of, so little, kind of like a month away or so. So the last 2 weeks, as a reminder, for each milestone, we have a feature freeze and a code freeze period. So the feature freeze is expected to start for 1.15 just about 2 weeks from now, like 2 Tuesdays, I think, from now. So we are getting towards the end of the milestone, and we want to be able to wrap up outstanding pull requests and features and whatnot. So let's take a look at roadmap items and see if there's much we want to call out there in terms of status and things going on. So I'll speak for, what the heck? That was odd. There was roadmap and then roadmap disappeared. Okay, there it is. That was really weird, GitHub. So for developer experience stuff, we've been making a lot of progress on the 5 major features that we wanted to complete for this milestone. There are PRs open for almost all, or late development work on almost all of them, and feedback going on and such. So the main feature of being able to do validation of Crossplane resources, like say where you use render, and you're in that inner development loop and you're working on your composition, the experience will be further improved by being able to upfront validate and make sure that the resources that are coming out of your compositions are accurate, correct, etc. So we're in active review of a PR for that feature functionality, the big feature for this epic here in this milestone. And so we expect to have that landed, and some other, the ones that don't have PRs open yet are coming fairly soon. So I don't see much risk in terms of what we want to accomplish in 1.15 for improving developer experience from not landing. So we will continue working on that. And then these in particular, I think all of the features that we're putting in for improving developer experience, those ones in particular are really useful to have folks trying them out and giving feedback on the experience to make sure that we are building something that is worthwhile and solves real world problems. So feedback is always very welcome on all of those. All right, Nick, I know you're online here. Do you want to give us a quick update about composition functions, maturing to GA, everything that you've accomplished so far in the milestone and what you have left?
Yeah, sure. The Python SDK is pretty much done. I'm writing docs for it. I've been getting an hour or two of working on those docs for the last day or two, so it might be done. It'll be done by the end of the week, probably today, hopefully. And then I think the other core thing is scale testing composition functions. Allowing a function to request extra observed resources, Philip has been working on. We close to aligned on the design. We're chatting tomorrow about that. I don't actually know right now. There is no reason to believe that actually needs to be a GA blocker, as in it wouldn't be a breaking change. We've sort of done the design phase, and it's something that we could add in a backward compatible way. So I think we could potentially take that out of must-have. The other thing that I'm almost certainly going to take out a must-have is deprecate native patch and transform composition. I still think we should do it. I just don't think we should do it at the same time as marking composition functions as GA. So my updated thinking is potentially in this release we'll call functions GA. I'm still a little on the fence. I would definitely like to do at least the scale testing, and I'm probably going to come right down to the wire on trying to make the decision as to whether we call them GA this release or not. But I think the order should be, regardless of what release it happens in, mark them GA, and then spend a bit of time updating with documentation to be more focused on functions and have better sort of put functions first rather than patch and transform first in the documentation. And then once that's done, then we could mark patch and transform as deprecated. I also think it would be nice to spend a little bit of time on thinking about what deprecation means there. Is there a world where we can delete the code without a breaking API change, for example, and have it just use a function in the background or something? Like, basically, there is a lot of code that makes Crossplane significantly more complex to maintain in the patch and transform implementation. It would be very nice to not have to maintain that, but obviously we can't break people, so having more time to plan that would be helpful. So that's about it. There's a ton of stuff in this issue, but like all of it was like if you like the stuff that's further down in this issue is all like it's kind of every single thing we're aware of that we might want to do with functions. So it's a little bit of a misleading that I put it all in the GA issue, because not all of this really needs to be done to market GA, in my opinion. It's a lot of nice to have stuff that could be done afterwards.
Yeah, and Nick, from my perspective and observations, with like there's no question that we're getting a fair amount of adoption and engagement on functions as a whole. They're solving real problems. The API so far, like it seems like we're getting some signal that the API as is well defined and can be something we commit to. So I like that we're getting some maturity around that, and getting fairly close to being in a good place for calling it GA there. I think that's all really good. And then I think like one of the biggest things in my mind, as you mentioned, is that whole scale testing of them. Like put them under load. Do they perform well? Is there anything we need to be concerned about when they hit higher scale than what we've probably run across so far? So I think this is a good list in terms of the things we're calling out that are most important for getting the confidence to call them GA.
Yeah, the other thing that I forgot to mention was not surprisingly, we've seen a couple of folks using composition functions to do things that aren't composition. For example, I would say if you delete an XR and you have a function that's going to go back up stuff, like backing stuff up isn't part of composition. It's kind of using a hook to do what I would think of as day two operations instead. It's understandable because that's the only really way to hook into it. But we have an idea called operations functions that would be sort of what we would intend for doing stuff like that. So ideally, I'd like to do like the first pass of a bit of a think into that, just to double check that whatever we end up doing with operations functions isn't likely to be like, oh, whoops, we got this wrong in composition functions when we add like a second type of function, if we add a second type of function. So I'd like to do a bit of thinking about that as well. So something that would be useful for that, actually, there's not a very formal way, but I don't want to talk about it right now, but maybe if folks could drop on the issue, like, what are day two things that people want to do with crossplay? Like, there's a handful of stuff that, like, backup and restore is the most obvious one, right? But then what else would people consider to be day two that you could, like, feasibly and reasonably do with crossplay? Some of the other stuff that comes to mind is, like, magically network everything together, but, like, that also kind of feels like a bit of a pipe dream. So ideas would be welcome there if you want to drop a comment there or something to sort of prompt for sort of use cases we should be thinking about in this issue. I think that was it. Or the final thought on this is the part of me wants to be conservative and wait another release before calling functions GA. The tension with that, though, or the reason the other part of me wants to rush and call it GA in 1.15. The reasoning for that is if we're going to do a multi-stage thing where we call it GA in one release and then we work on docs for the next release and then we deprecate, patch and transform the release after that, that's it's potentially like 6 to 9 months from now before we like get to a point where we actually are like clearly able to tell people use functions for all the things, don't use this other thing. And I would like to minimize that time that we spend kind of with the way that's still beta and the way that's sort of semi-deprecated. I'd like to get out of that sort of middle area as soon as possible. So That's it.
Cool. Awesome, Nick. Yeah, thanks for that update, man. And let all of us know if there's any additional like eyes or things that you need as we're heading towards feature freeze in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has any bandwidth to help me with scale testing, that would be appreciated. But if not, I think I'll be able to find the time.
Cool. All right. Philippe, I wanted to get at a 2024 update from you as well on composition environments and what we may be hoping to still accomplish in 1.15. So yeah, let us give us an update on that if you can, bud.
Yeah, I mean there was a PR out with a design proposal for the promotion to beta. It's mostly a non-proposal, let's say. It's mostly saying let's double down on functions. So see the discussion above from Nick, and so it's mostly there. We kind of reached some consensus. We still need a decision on whether to call it beta or not in the next release. It's just a matter of having a few meetings and discussing whether we want to call it beta. There is a feeling that it's actually already kind of considered beta, so calling it beta could be just reflecting reality into what's the API currently, and but there are reasons not to promote it to beta, so it's just a matter of taking a decision. There is not much to implement and actually code to write except major changes, but we already kind of committed on the current shape of the API, so we are in this situation.
And Philippe, you and Nick are getting some time to sit down and chat through this more than we have as a SIG for environment config composition environments recently. Is that right? You're meeting with Nick tomorrow?
Yeah. Tomorrow we're meeting with Nick. The two topics we were mostly probably going to talk about the function extra resources topic, but that's related to this one. So we might end up also chatting a little bit about this one. But yeah, the SIG meeting, we kind of discussed it through the past meetings about this also in the SIG meeting. We kind of all are on also, if I recall correctly, also Bob was on the same page. It's mostly just making the final call on what to do. That's what's missing mainly.
Awesome. I think that'll be great to have some clarity, across the maintainer team there with the decision on, what will we do in 1.15 and then, clear steps beyond that also. So thanks for continuing to drive this. Cool. All right, just a couple more updates here. So I don't think Lovro is on the call here, so I'll just give a quick update for promote management policies to GA. So management policies with, the feature that enables things like observe only resources and ignore changes and stuff like that. So that has been being put through its paces in the 1.15 timeframe here by its adoption into the upjet generated providers. So a number of bugs were found, some significant hardening going on during the milestone because of that usage there. And then provider Kubernetes has had a similar concept for a very long time that predates this particular generalized feature for management policies of resources. And then Lovro has been working pretty hard on updating provider Kubernetes to consume this approach or this feature as well, so it's ubiquitous and consistent across the entire Crossplane ecosystem. I think that got actually merged this morning. So most of the focus has been on hardening and then having consistent usage of management policies across all the providers, basically. So that being said, it's probably not likely that this will move to GA officially in 1.15, and it'll probably be, let's give it another quarter, another release of bake time, and do that in 1.16 after the focus and the hardening that's been done during this milestone. Okay, And then project maturity stuff, we are very much so continuing on the path towards graduation with the CNCF. We made some really good progress at the end of the year before the holidays for kind of working with some CNCF leadership and getting guidance there and having the path laid out in front of us. So we've got a lot of legwork, a lot of politicking to do, and we will continue to make progress on that. Jean, real quick from you, man, for cycles from you on like all the core infrastructure initiative and the CLO monitor badges and all that stuff. Is that something you're going to have time for in the next month or so, or you want me to focus on that?
I'm actually starting on that tomorrow and next week.
Oh,
yeah.
Isn't that a fun way to end off your week on a Friday? Sweet. All right. Well, that was awesome, Jean. Let me know as you're continuing with that, anything I can help with or any ways to divide and conquer. Cool. All right. All right. So yeah, that is the 1.15 roadmap update stuff. Anything else that folks want to add for 1.15 or bring up for 1.15 as we are marching towards the feature freeze in a couple weeks? All right. Then let's go ahead and
actually
take...
do have a question for 115. I talked to Marcus,
Yes.
and since I'm seeing Christopher on the call, oh, sorry, that was for database provider. Never mind. Please ignore me.
It's hard to ignore you, Christina. You're a valuable member of the community. Do you want to bring up your topic now? Because we're just about to go to providers.
Yeah, okay.
Might be
Yeah, the
relevant.
provider, so there was a issue open to add API call count to the provider. So we can see what it does to the APIs. I dug into the CloudWatch metrics, and for some APIs, there we can see what it's doing, like the EC2 API. But the most important API seems to be the IAM API, because everybody is hitting the IAM API. And in CloudWatch, we do not expose, like we expose the throttle metrics, but not the count metrics. So I was wondering if we can bump this up the priority list. And Marcus had asked me, do I have somebody from AWS to contribute? Not at this point. I'm trying to find somebody who can help right now. I don't have any capacity for sure.
So we gave this some thought already. And what we're actually going to have to do is modify our forked version of the Terraform provider to expose that metrics, because it's the Terraform provider that makes the actual API calls to the API. And we might make one call to the Terraform provider and it could make many calls, because some resource creations are multiple steps. So we actually need to customize the Terraform provider to expose that data back to Upjet and expose it in as part of its set of metrics.
There's something that could be added to the AWS Go SDK instead.
I don't. I think Chris, you pointed something up on the community provider AWS. I didn't have a quick look at detailed look at that. How did they tie into the calls there?
I don't exactly check the pull request. I was only aware of that Swisscom was providing this pull request to the community provider. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking a central implementation that could, deliver the capability not only for AWS, but for literally anything that's created with Upjet. Any provider that's created with Upjet would be really, really useful.
So back to the question is, in timeline, when do we think this can get bumped up?
Yeah,
from my side, just to let you know, every single customer, that is the first thing for day 2 operations they ask. Besides the database recovery.
Just based on our current roadmap plans, I'd imagine it would not show up before March if Upbound's engineers focused on it.
All right.
All right. All right, let's stick with the theme of providers then, and get a quick update on recent releases and some investments. I think this stuff was talked about maybe in the last community meeting, but now we're in 2024. Let's see where we're at.
Yeah, I did update it a little bit for the latest status. Should I go, Jared?
Please do.
Okay. So all of the outbound CSP providers are now on Update 1.0, so they all have the performance improvements and utilization improvements from a CPU and memory point of view. We're currently working on Update 1.1, which specifically will bring support for the Terraform plugin framework. And that will finally allow us to get rid of the Terraform CLI completely. Only provider AWS currently uses the Terraform plugin framework resources and has a few of them, about 22, I think. And we're hoping we've made good progress on providing support for the plugin framework. And so with the next release of provider AWS, which will also actually bump the Terraform AWS provider version to number V5, we'll see provider AWS reach the 1.0 milestone with all the totally rid of the Terraform CLI and good support for all the new resources on AWS. And then that should probably, I want to put dates on it, but end of January should see that released. And then following that, there's a few kind of like internal events at Upbound that will slow us down over February, but we're also looking to upgrade provider GCP to the latest Terraform version, which will likely see the light of day in mid-March, potentially a little bit earlier. And then we need to complete the migration of the providers to Crossplane Contrib to close off the announcement Bassam made at the Crossplane day, the Control Planes Day. And then that will see us close off kind of our current focus around performance. And then we will move over to a phase that will be focused on quality improvement overall.
I have a quick question in relation to the upgrading of Terraform. How will that impact, let's say, us deploying resources? I'm thinking if there's massive API changes, I know I've seen ones in like the SageMaker world where, right, AWS has done a lot in that area. The Terraform configuration in V5 versus V4 is a lot different. Is the idea that I would use V1 Alpha 1 or whatever for now, and then when I'm ready to make that swap, I then update the resource to, whatever V1 or V5 API version with the updated configuration, and then theoretically there should be no issues?
So we are going to support the 0.x release series of the provider that will stay on Terraform V4, at least for the next couple of months. We are working on supporting multi-version CRDs and conversion webhooks with Upjet. And one of the there's a couple of fields that have been, for instance, renamed, mostly to match SDK changes and so on. And so those changes we're now able to automate with Upjet. And so it will eliminate some of the toil of migrating to the newer version. But there will be some changes like fields that have been removed, that have been deprecated for a while and removed either because they were no longer needed, there was another field, or the SDK removed them, that people would have to manually update. And we'll publish a exhaustive upgrade guide, but there will be some toil needed for folks to move to the 1.0 release of the provider.
So the idea is that some manual change needed, hopefully some of it's automated, but expect some work on, I'll say, teams who are using Crossplane in the Upbound provider to make the upgrades.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Very good question, Blake. Thanks for bringing that up, man. All right. So I think that captures providers there. So let's go ahead and move on in the second half of the meeting here to the community section. So this list of content, as we typically have, this is the most full I've probably ever seen it. Maybe more people are talking about Crossplane and showing it off. Maybe Kelly is doing a fantastic job of finding all of these resources and sharing them with us. So either way, definitely some cool stuff over the last month to read more and watch more about what folks are doing with Crossplane, and definitely enjoyable. So check out all of these resources here. We talked about the API call counters, so let's go on to provider Ansible. So maintainer of provider Ansible reached out and is looking to get help from the community here. They may be stepping down from like with demands on their time and resources, may not have time to be a full-time maintainer anymore. So they are making a call here to the community for folks interested in the provider Ansible functionality. There are opportunities for people to get more involved there and to become a maintainer themselves, essentially, to keep this particular provider going sustainably. So if you are interested in that, you can reach out directly to the current maintainers of provider Ansible, or reach out to me anytime. I can help kind of make that conversation move on and make progress on that. But folks that are interested in provider Ansible or depending on it, there is an opportunity to get more involved, essentially. All right. We talked already about functions in the context of v1.15 and moving them to GA. Nick did mention that, the SDK and template repo, etc. The framework here for writing composition functions in Python is available now, and folks are starting to get some hands-on experience with it. So I don't think there's more to jump into there, since we kind of already covered that earlier on. But Nick, let me know if there's anything else you wanted to add there. Otherwise, Christopher Haar, are you ready to show us off the cool canoe stuff that you had been working on last year?
Yeah, I can show this.
Sweet. Let me stop my share, man. And it is all yours.
Yeah, let me try to share my screen. You can see my screen now?
Yep, looks good. The browser, at least.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, cool. Hello, everybody. One hint, I see Manabu is here. He's part of the Canoe community. So, hey, man. He did a lot of great work in Canoe. So let's see what I was doing at the end of the last year. So for guys who are not knowing Canoe, it's an open source initiative for building internal developer platforms. A few companies working on it, so like AWS, Twilio, Salesforce. And the idea here is they're sharing what kind of developer tools you can building together, what thoughts about what patterns, and they want to help organizations to make their technology choices, and also like what kind of pain you have in platform engineering. And that's the reason why I really like Canoe. It helps the platform builders and developers to build their own developer platform. As you can see here on the Canoe website, it's taking a lot of take care of a lot of parts, so of the compute platform, observability, secret management, developer portal, but also on applications, how you can package them together, how your repositories looks like, and so on and so forth. And what I was seeing when I was playing around, there's a nice reference platform based on Terraform. If you're using Terraform, then you can start building your reference platform here with this repository. Manabu was part of here. And then I was thinking about, why not using a complete Crossplane to set up this part with a control plane, and like starting and thinking about what kind of tools you can bring together out of a control plane to bring this up. So this leads to a platform reference in the Upbound marketplace for now, platform reference AWS Canoe. As you can see here, it's bundled a lot of things together. Just a short hint here in the repository. As you can see, we can set up now out of a control plane a compute platform, spinning up Crossplane as a control plane inside, using validation webhooks from Crossplane, external secret stores and secrets management together with Crossplane, using Crossplane packaging mechanism for templating, etc. pp. And then we also like spinning up an Argo CD workflows using identity and access with Keycloak, for example, here, and using Backstage as developer portal on top of it, and using the nice observability configuration, what is built up from the Crossplane community for observability, special interest group. And this is what I'm built here together. Let's only have a short view how it looks like. I was using to demonstrate this now an outbound control plane that you can see how it looks like. As you can see here, this is a control plane and outbound SaaS. You can see I created the claim for this platform reference, what I created here. If we click on it, we will see that we are running a lot of resources, managed resources out of these compositions we bundled here together. So you can see like we set it up an EKS cluster. We're using IRSA from AWS. We're using Carpenter inside, networking, abstractions, Argo CD, observability stuff, and so on and so forth. And as you can see here, around about 100 managed resources together. And then at the end of the day, you will see it brings up a full operable Backstage, which is connected to an Argo CD, which is using for authentication in the background, as I said, in Keycloak. So I don't know, let's say, let's log in to Argo CD. Let's try it now. Let's see. As you can see, I can log in via my Keycloak and Argo CD. Everything is there, and Crossplane installation is running. Sync failed at the moment for reasons after an upgrade. But this is what I did with this platform reference for Canoe based with Crossplane. So bundling up everything with Crossplane, and after around about 45 minutes, you have running the full stack of Canoe on a Crossplane control plane. That's what I can show.
That's awesome, Chris. So you mentioned that the reference implementation that was in the Canoe repo was based on Terraform. Is there any capability for like calling attention to this reference implementation based on Crossplane from that, like the upstream Canoe repo or the docs or whatever, so that there's more attention on this particular implementation as well?
I'm not really aware of. I was talking with a few guys in the Canoe community, but we never talked about like referencing this together between. So I don't know.
I can quickly talk. I know one of the patterns that Carlos built, the GitOps bridge, which I know Canoe wants to adopt at some point, has talked about being able to spin up like clusters within, using Crossplane and having that as part of your infrastructure as code instead of Terraform. So I think if you talk to Manabu and Nima and those folks, they'd probably be open to, getting Crossplane more involved in the IEC side of it.
Yep.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for that, Blake. Yeah, and Chris, feel free to have any of those conversations there that can call more attention to this from the general Canoe effort as well, dude. Sweet. Any other questions about what Chris was showing off? I'll start my share again. I think I'm back. Cool. So Chris, did you add this issue that you wanted to talk about in the agenda?
So yeah, I see Nick also commented the last days a little bit on this, only to make a little bit attention on this. We shifted a lot of compositions to from with pattern transform to function pattern transform, and what we observed is if you adding a patch, for example, on some of the resource and the patch is wrong. So you're patching to a field and the field is not in the schema, or for example, you're patching a string instead of an array, right? And you're not catching it up before, the pattern transform function will remove your resource. And this can lead to problems in your production environments, right? So for example, if you're adding a wrong patch, and you can remove your whole EKS cluster, for example, with this kind of issue what we have at the moment. So for that reason, we should focus a little bit on this or make attention on this issue what we have at the moment.
For what it's worth, I still feel pretty good about the fix that I suggested. what, 17 hours ago, according to that. And it would be a pretty easy fix to make. So unless anyone feels it's controversial, I could just go and open a pull request today. Feel like returning Fatal would at least be an improvement on deleting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. And then I wonder also if there are lessons to learn here from I don't know, like end-to-end testing or for the unit testing or other types of, you know, quality
Yeah, so
automation.
there's one thing which is so we're having like validation webhooks, right, for patch and transform when you're using the core patch and transform. But if we're using the function patch and transform, we're losing the validation webhook functionality because it's not aware of what we're doing in the new composition with functions, right? So this is a little bit a lack of feature at the moment when you're switching to functions.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's kind of a separate thing, though. I mean, like, validation would help, but you still don't want to just be deleting stuff if there's a config error. So I think they're both, you know, related, but two separate things. Yeah, I don't know, like E2E test. Is patch and transform special as a function compared to other functions? Should we be where would you E2E test patch and transform functions from, et cetera, et cetera? Like on one hand, absolutely, we should have E2E tests for every single possible scenario. On the other hand, the you know, the practical, where does that go? How do you set it up? All that kind of stuff. Functions are interesting because we don't want to expect every function author to go and write E2E tests, et cetera, et cetera. But then we have some of these like big functions that everyone uses, like patch and transform, Go templating, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's a takeaway, maybe it should be think about what it means to end-to-end test a function, where that lives, where we want to invest in that, et cetera, et cetera. I would imagine we probably don't want something as heavyweight as like core Crossplane's end-to-end test framework to like exist for every function out there, but nor do we want core Crossplane's end-to-end framework to be reaching out and testing every function out there. So it's a tricky situation. More testing is good.
Yep, for sure. Agree with that. And I also wonder if this is something like, so that, you know, there's obviously you want to have assurances, validation, protections, whatever, at various stages of the life cycle. So, you know, like a apply time, update time, catch for this that says this is invalid, this is not good, and rejects it. Like that's a good thing too. But I do then wonder, with Ezgi's work on validation, like during developer time, composition authoring time, and validating the results of render, if this is something that, or a class of issues like this would be caught in that type of validation as well, and if we'd be making improvements at that phase of the life cycle also.
Not that I'm aware of, because the thing that is invalid here is the composition, like the API type composition. It's
not the resources.
Not the output of the composition. Like the cause is that the output would just be missing a managed resource. And so if you validated the output, it would say, yeah, it just would be missing a managed resource, and the validation has no way of knowing that you intended there to be an extra managed resource from what it saw. So it'd be like, cool, yep, I saw 3 managed resources and they're all valid. I don't know that the 4th one was missing due to a configuration error. The reason that we have less validation is because of the inputs to a composition, to a function, right? The input to a function is just a raw extension. It's just an arbitrary blob of JSON or YAML inside the composition type, and the webhooks that validate a composition don't know what all the possible inputs could be, so they just ignore that section. Whereas when patch and transform was like the one true way to do composition that was baked in, we could be like, we know the schema for its configuration, so we'll go look at that. Yeah.
Is there a pattern to establish? Because I've run into issues with this as well, and part of the problem that I think is like trying to debug that sort of stuff. I got to go look at the XR. I got to and especially where there's no validation, is there room to say, like in the Go SDK, throw a Kubernetes event, right? Similar to how normal Crossplane does it, throw a Kubernetes event on and say, like, this is the issue that occurred.
I think that I don't know about in the Go SDK, but like functions can do that. Like I would in fact say it's a good practice that if your function takes an input, it should validate its input before proceeding.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is like if I wonder if in the Go SDK, like there's a logging parameter. I wonder if in that log, if you set like, you know, if there's a way you could say for these log levels, emit an event in Kubernetes.
There is already a way to emit events in Kubernetes from functions. You emit what's the term? A result of normal or warning. So it's slightly separate from logs, but a good pattern would be to like emit a debug log and emit an event or whatever at the same time, a result in function parlance.
Makes sense.
So then it's at most one event for function execution.
No, you can. It's at most one fatal event, because if we see a fatal event, we just are like, whoop, we saw a fatal event or a fatal result. We'll just fatal result just causes us to be like, error, this whole pipeline, everything with the world is wrong. We stop. But for there's 3 different events result. Severities, fatal, normal, and warning. If you emit a normal or a warning result, that corresponds to a normal or a warning event being emitted on the XR. So if you describe the XR, you'll see those events. It's probably slightly unfortunate that we probably should have just called them events or something like that from function, but they ended up being called results due to historical reasons.
It's sort of related, sort of not. There was an issue that I think was fixed, that a fix went in yesterday, and I think it's maybe going to be backported, where in certain conditions using functions, a issue with the execution of the function or the results of the function, something like that, would not be attached to the particular composite resource that it belongs to. So it's this issue here, 5105. And where, oh yeah, so for instance, like I had something I was using the Go template function, and I was trying to write to a status that didn't exist, and that was causing an error, but there was no evidence of that just by examining the object. And so I think Philippe put in a fix yesterday that makes sure that events related to the function pipeline for a composite resource actually get attached to that composite resource, and you'll be able to discover it and find it as an event much more easily now. Okay. So I think that's everything for that topic. I'll go ahead and accept these changes here. So I think the only thing left then is this particular issue here, or pull request, sorry. And Arjun, that was you, bud?
Yes, that was me. This doesn't require the entire audience, so I was just a bit confused where to put this, so that's why I put it there. I did a few things, ran a few commands. I don't know what did they do, so I wanted to catch up with someone in the group and to seek some help on how can I proceed with this. I don't know if this is the right place to do it though.
Yeah, do you maybe you and I could sync up, like get some time together, Arjun. We could do like a one-on-one, and kind of see where you're at and discuss the continued progress on that. So yeah, let's find some time on our calendars together, and we can walk through it and spend some time together, man.
Yep, I would love to. Thank you.
Sweet.
Do you want me to drop a DM on Slack?
Yeah, send me a DM on Slack, and then we'll follow up there.
Thank you.
Sweet, dude. All right. So I think that's everything on the agenda then, here for the group. So if there's nothing else that folks want to get in here to today, we can go ahead and call it. All right. See y'all. Thanks for coming. Happy New Year. See y'all soon.